Hello all, this is Ben Falk with KillerSites.com. Welcome to part 6 in our series on form validation with PHP and JavaScript. I wanted to spend a couple minutes in the final video in this series to discuss how to make our form functional, as in how to actually take the data from the form and email it somewhere. This isn't exactly related to form validation specifically, but I don't believe we have any sort of contact form tutorial at the moment. And since it seems like we're so close to having something completed and working, I thought it was worth taking the time to discuss this. So I've opened up contact.php, and I'm using the exact same files that I was working with in parts 1 through 5. And I'm going to do a couple edits to it and show you how to get this working. First of all, before I get started, I did want to mention that we're going to be using PHP's mail function, which is here. You can find it on the php.net in the manual, and it discusses a little bit about the mail function and how to use it, and the comments can be pretty useful as far as dealing with bugs and weird quirks with this function. So I wanted to mention that. One important thing to keep in mind is if you're running this on something like WAMP or MAMP, something on your local machine rather than on an externally hosted web server, you may have issues with the mail function. I believe my computer is set up, it won't display any errors with that function, but I won't actually receive any email. So keep that in mind. Make sure if you're going to be testing this, make sure you upload it to an actual server, otherwise you may not receive mail. So let's get started. First of all, I want to add a couple variables at the top here. I'm going to add a to variable, and this is going to be the email that I want this form sent to. So I'm just going to fill out this information with sample data. Not worrying too much, but obviously you'll want to replace the sample data with your correct email address and all of your personal information. So to, and then I'm going to add a subject. I'm just going to put something simple. Okay, like so. And then I'm going to skip down to the bottom of the form, and I'm going to include a couple functions that will help protect our form against spam. And in my case, just to save myself a little bit of time, I'm simply going to paste this in here. So if you go down, I have two functions. I have a contains bad string function and a contains new lines function. And basically the bad string function, it has an array with several different elements. We don't want these specific pieces of text within our contact form. It could be a potential spam attempt, someone trying to hack our form and perhaps send email using our form out to other people other than the to email that we specify. So that's an array, and then we're returning true if it turns out that the string that we are passing in includes one of these bad strings, or false otherwise. And similarly with contains new lines, we're doing a check for new lines and returning true if it matches this regular expression, or false otherwise. And I should mention, while I think of it, these functions are borrowed from an article by Ian Gilfillian. I don't know how to pronounce that. I apologize. But on PHP or phpbuilder.com, you can see the full URL here. And he has a pretty useful article discussing preventing spam on contact forms, so you may want to check that out. So back to the code. We're going to be using these functions in a second. So I'm going to go up. We want, just before we check if the form is valid, I'm going to add in a couple other checks. So let's go ahead check for bad data. And this is where we're going to use those functions. So if contains okay, so if the form element called name contains a bad string, if that return is true, we know it does contain a bad string, and we'll want to show some sort of error message. But what I'm going to go ahead and do, I'm going to copy and paste this. And I'm going to include one, I'm going to include name, I'm going to include email, phone, fax, and comments. Okay, so if any of these variables contain a bad string, I'm just going to set valid form equals false. And I'm not going to specify any specific error message in this case, because the only way that this will turn out to be false is if for some reason someone's purposely trying to spam the form. I don't really think you're going to have any legitimate user trying to access this form and getting this error for some reason. So I'm just going to leave it like this. And then I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm just going to copy and paste this whole chunk. And instead of checking for contains bad string, I'm going to check for new line. Okay, and with one exception, I'm going to remove this comments line, form comments, because that does have a potential to include valid new line. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. Okay, so that's good. And now, if this is a valid form, we actually need to go ahead and submit the email message. So let's go ahead and create the message. And I'm just going to input all of the form data. And this /n is a new line, so it'll skip to the next line. I guess I should mention we're doing a plain text email, but if you go to the PHP.net manual, down at the bottom here, example number 4, it talks about sending HTML email, and I'm sure there are other tutorials you can find online that'll help with that as well. So anyway, back to the code. So I started creating my message, and I'm just going to keep on adding to it and add a new line for every single element here. And to save a little bit of time, I'm just going to copy and paste this line. So name, email, it's going to be phone, fax, and finally comments. I'm just going to call it message. In my case, I'm going to add an extra new line here. So this will go down to the next, add an extra blank line in between fax and message. And I believe that's about it for this section. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add some headers. These are HTML email headers that indicate things like who the message from, who to reply to, etc. So I'm going to include my from. And this is going to be the xSender header. And again, I'm just going to copy and paste this line a couple times. Okay, and we're almost all set. Just last step is to send the email. And to do that, we use the mail function. We pass in the to, the subject, the message, and finally the headers, like so. And then with the mail submitting successfully, we redirect to the redirect location that we specified up here. So let me go ahead and save that. I believe we're good to go. So let me just go ahead and test this. Let me just make sure we don't get any sort of errors. Give me 1 second. Let me go ahead and find this. Okay, I noticed two things that were causing the issue. First of all, this line is incorrect. Apparently when I pasted it in from TextExpander, things got a little bit confused. So here's the correct version. So if you want to just double check, make sure that the regular expression is correct. I did wonder why the word Sunday was in there. It seemed a little bit confusing to me. So that's one thing. And then the final thing is if you go up here, you need to remove the $sign from PHP version because that needs to be a function call. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and save it. Let's preview. And it looks like we're all good. I've gone ahead and tested this on my live site in a temporary location, and it looks like everything is sending correctly. So when you do test this, let's go back up here. Obviously make sure your information both in the headers and in the to and subject is correct. And if you upload it to your own web server, you should be receiving emails fine. So that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for listening, and feel free to send me any emails or comments on the forum if you have any questions. Thanks again.